Good evening. Welcome back. Great opportunity for another fellowship luncheon. And if you missed this one, then make it a point for maybe next month to join us. Always a good opportunity to be able to do so. I noticed on Facebook that Charles and Jeannie were in Corinth today. Of course, this is stuff I read, never really seen any photos, but they were well enough to show some of the photos they've got. I told Jeannie to take plenty and make sure that she shows us, and she's been showing some along their trip on Facebook, so I've really been encouraged by that. I know they were at Bethlehem during our garage sale, kind of back during that stretch, so their little Holy Land trip coming to a conclusion, and they'll be hopefully back with us this week. Some of you also knew, and this is I guess this is the great tool of using those social media outlets. I have put forth on there that we are going to have another movie night. I had to move the date because of the graduation of one of ours, actually, one of the Whites. Remember Latricia, several years back, went through the rotation, and now Carrie is finishing up and graduating on the 6th. So his family has reserved the Student Learning Center on the 6th, so I had to move it from the 6th to the 13th. It is about an hour and 20 minutes long. Caleb and I watched it this weekend. Levada Wampler let us have this video. She said, I'd like for you to see it. And embarrassingly, I've had it for probably a couple of months now. I just couldn't get down watching it. But I was really, really impressed. Caleb and I really enjoyed it. It's called about God's wonders. I mean, we talk about, and it goes in the animal kingdom, it goes into space, it goes into the human anatomy. It just screams creator. You will walk away with a greater appreciation and fondness of the God that we serve. So mark it on your calendar. I could have done it this Friday. I was going to do it just kind of like for us and have it here, but I thought, no, this would maybe another great opportunity to put our name out there once again and maybe invite someone. We had someone, if you remember, our last movie night when we played Woodlawn, that young lady that came, and she came and visited one Sunday morning, but she came there because she saw it on Facebook. She saw there was a movie night and it was free and open to the public. So you just never know. So we'll try our hands on that. But May 13th, and you can mark that, and you'll hear more details about that to come. Now, when I have this lesson tonight, it's entitled Afraid of Commitment. I think the tendency is when I start talking about this, we're going to gravitate to others that have a problem with commitment. And if you do that, then you've missed the point, because it's like anything that we read in the New Testament. This is the mirror. Where do I stand with my commitment to God? Am I lacking? Don't start pulling names out of the sky in your mind about people that are uncommitted, people that should be more committed, people of the world, people that we know, relatives, family, friend members, those kind of things. I want us to be able to really personalize this a little bit more. So, as you know, my Sunday evenings, I kind of throw a little bit a harder pitch at you, I guess, because I think you guys can handle it. So that's kind of where the angle is with it. But the question posed tonight is, what do you think make people so afraid to be committed these days? And I mean total commitment. You'll hear employers say that. I mean, before, I want you to give the 110%. Give me your all. And how much they are not getting that in return. I remember talking to one of my former bosses, and she was having a struggle interviewing different potential people to come to work. And she said during that interview process, individuals will come and they have a very good resume and they may have all of their education, and they'll ask all the right questions. And their questions are very self-serving in a lot of ways. How much am I going to make? And of course, we'd all want to know that. How much benefits are there? Like insurance, 401k, how much vacation time? The whole conversation was, what is this company going to give me? And she kind of came frustrated with the process that's all the conversation was struck up by the individual. Not what else can you tell me about the job or the makeup. It was all, let me strictly see my benefits. And there's nothing wrong with that. That should be explored and talked about. But I said, well, maybe you need to ask them. I said, well, what are you going to provide for the company? Now, that's an interesting question. Because you can say, well, what do you mean? I'm going to show up, right? I'm going to be a 9-to-5er. When it's here and it's time for me to be here, I'll be here. And when it's time for me to leave, well, I'm going to leave. And there's nothing wrong with that either, but you get a telltale sign of kind of where this individual is going to be employed with you, how much they're going to give of themselves, more so than holding back. And I think that it's a question that we can ask in all factions of life. Why is this pushback of commitment, of not going all the way? 50%, maybe a handful, maybe not all entirely. Instead, we hear a lot of, well, I'd like to. I'd like to give more. I'd like to be more committed. It's kind of this idea that as long as you have a good intention that you wanted to, that's really just going to take care of it. And we just pacify that so much in our society today, when our best may be described as, well, that's all I can give. I can't give it all. And why? Because we have reservations. We hold back. It's kind of human nature. We do it all the time, meaning myself included, afraid to give money to those because they may squander it. How many times we've talked the good talk of really wanting to be giving with the Lord's provisions that he's given us, and then talk ourselves right out of it because of some kind of financial resume that someone else has to acquire. A lot of us letting go things because it has greater value than those we give it to. The garage sale is a prime example. I found myself seeing things on that table saying, well, you know who's going to get this? And are they really kind of deserving of this? And what are they going to do with it? I've heard people even ask, well, are they going to turn around and sell it? I don't know what they're going to do with it. That's not the purpose. God wants to know, what are you doing? I gave it and let go, and I gave it freely, because you got to be careful with this. This is too good for that kind of clientele kind of attitude, because that's the church. I mean, it was too good of a gift that God came down to give us the greatest gift that he could give freely. And then what do we turn around and do? All of what he gave up. Well, yeah, but that's God. And he lowered himself lower than the angels. And he gave that with no pre-requirements. And we know his story about who he's touched and who he came in contact with. And there could have been a lot of pushback from his giving as well. And even some of the disciples were wondering why he was going to the Gentile world and healing certain individuals, because they were unworthy. They had their own criteria of who is worthy. And it wasn't certain types of people, especially Samaritans. That's why Samaritans, I think, is used over and over again to really hammer home the point that Jesus did not have a problem with it. All of what we give with our commitment to things may not be described as our all. And when the command is loving God with all of your heart and your soul and your mind and strength, as I said before, and I've said it in class and also in lessons, none of us can raise our hand and say that we have done that to completion, to 100% across the board in all of those areas, because there's a struggle, because we're limited. We're only human. And some have just plain given up on trying. And being measured may fall way under the 110% that is sometimes asked for. That's really kind of left for coach speak, or bosses, employers. Coaches will tell a player, I want you to give 110%. Well, a player knows exactly what that coach wants. There's no holding back. I'm going to give it my all. In fact, he says, even if you make a mistake, I want you to do it at 100%, because I don't want you to hold back. I want you to give it your all. Give it your 110%. What were they saying? It was, give all you've got and then some, because we all know 100% is it. But they're trying to tell you to go beyond that, beyond the reaches of what you think you're capable of. And then it may surprise you that you may go above what you think your 100% is, just to make sure that we aren't holding back. That's the whole premise, because it's easy to do with not only athletes, but those who are employed to go to work. Why they ask for it to begin with. But how much in reality do we really give or devote entirely to anything? Now you think about it. We got, job, and we have a portion of this, and we have our hobbies, and we have our interests. I don't know how much energy I have to things, and without devotion and drive would many fail. But then what? How do we see failure? I want us to take us back to an example that we all know of, and I will tell you that I fall far short because I don't have this kind of ambition. I get frustrated a lot easier. But Thomas Edison, one of the greatest inventors of all times, with over 1,093 U.S. patents. I mean, he invented all kinds of things, not only the lights we see, but cinematography with the moving motion picture, the camera, and then also the phonograph of making all that music, the recorded music, all of that stuff. Great inventions of someone that hasn't even, we just have to go back 100 years to get these inventions. But Thomas Edison made 1,000 unsuccessful attempts at inventing the light bulb as we know it. Now, you think about that. Now, he had to record every single time that he failed. How many times have we failed at one thing and said, that's it, I'm done. I tried. I gave it my best. Now, see, this is an indictment to me that I can't say that I would go 1,000 times. Maybe I'll let someone else try to invent this. But see, his initiative, his desire to see it through, and he really believed in that. I have to admit that I may have quit. I don't even think I could get to 10. Maybe if that. Could I last to 100? Could you or I? But just think of that. 1,000 failures, and not knowing that there may be another 1,000 failures to come before we get that. What if he would have quit at 999 and said, that's it. I've tried. I love his response when a reporter asked him, the final conclusion, how did it feel to fail 1,000 times? See, that's what their focus is on, like many of us. Not my question was, wow, how great it was. I mean, just the angle that I just took. But someone actually asked him the question. And Edison's reply was this: I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps. Now, see, most of us can't turn it with that kind of thinking. You know, I mean, it's that he didn't turn it into a negative at all. In order to get there, it took 1,000 steps to get me where I am today. Now, that is drive. That is seeing it through. Can I say that I have any of that with anything that I am committed today? When we think of commitment today, we think of maybe a job. Maybe it's a marriage. And why we can talk to those who are more afraid of getting married because of that word alone. Commitment. What will it take? Well, we know it's everything. I mean, it's sacrifice, it's giving, it's taking, it's kind of everything, and it's forever, we're told. And, you know, that can be a scary thing for a new couple that's venturing out. And when someone has cold feet, they may be described as one who has fear of commitment. See, they've counted the cost, and they're kind of concerned about it. Nothing wrong with that. And they may not be ready for such a commitment, and maybe that's the time to pull back. It's better that than doing something else, and it may be better off for that individual to wait. So, but what are they afraid of? Well, you could say, well, it's the fear of the unknown, and that's part of it. Afraid it may not work out, and then what? They would be stuck. They would be embarrassed. They couldn't see it through to the end, and then they would be exposed by others to be able to see the same thing. How about even the marriage commitment like some view it today? Some seem to treat it more like dating. And vows, we can forget vows and promises that I take and you take, and we promise before these witnesses. And the thought of is, we'll do this as long as it works and keeps working out. And when it stops working, then we can quit and try something else. That's really the commitment. And don't get me wrong, this is not an indictment of marriages not working or divorce. There are real problems that exist, I know. And not all the answers that we can give work out for all problems. That is for sure. And I know it happens, but studies have also shown that even the beginning stages, that if two people start out just living together, have a hard time making it work all the way with a total commitment. Why? Because they've already got a mindset that there is an easy escape, an exit plan if necessary. There's nothing legal. I don't have to go to the courthouse. There's nothing filed at all. I don't have to worry. And so it's not impossible for them to stay together. It's just a more challenge. It's not an impossibility, but something that we can examine and kind of take a look at more with commitments these days. What makes us feel like doing something? On one hand, deep down we want to have great intentions, but then don't. Or we give up. Or we quit. I mean, how many Thomas Edisons are there out there in the United States? How many could put to the test that if you're going to go through this, you're committed to it? Or how many times, like in my self-example, say, well, I tried. I gave it a try, and it just didn't work. We're told about that in church work. I've been told all of the things that I can't do as opposed to what we can do, and then almost feel good about it. Because at least I had the feeling of a want to, like we get credit for just having a desire. I don't know where that comes from. I wanted to, but didn't. Doesn't that count? Well, let me ask you, that may work for someone if they were telling you that in reverse, what would you like? Would you like if someone did that for you and all that they said was, I know I didn't come through for you. I promised you I'd help you out with that, but I wanted to, but I didn't. Now, how far does that go with you? Well, an apology is given, and you kind of have a desire that they said they wanted to, but they didn't come through with it. Really deep down, I know you counted on me to do something but didn't, and I'm sorry. How far would that continue in your relationship with the other person? As far as reliability, could I count on that person? Not for very much. This failure to full commitment exists in all areas of life, it seems. Like take the diet, for example. So if I've gone through back and forth through my entire adult life, the notion I know that I need to eat healthier, but the commitment that it takes means what? It means limits. It means sacrifice. It means watching calories. It's not a fun job. I just rather just throw caution to the wind. And I've done that on both sides. Not getting all that I want when I want. We count the costs and say, nah, I'll start that diet next month. Next year's resolution. I'll really be better next year. And trust me, most of us are not good in this department. We don't like the word giving up. And for what? We don't see that doing anything in our immediate future. It's always down the road. Well, this is going to be better for you down the road. We think that it will somehow take away my happiness. In some way it does, because I enjoy eating, which it really doesn't just look like it's adding up at this point. It may take us away from our dependence on our high heightened appetite to overindulge. And don't fool yourself. You know, when I was 19 years old and working at Burger King, I found it very strange that a man would come in and ask for double meat on his Whopper, because the Whopper was, remember, the biggest burger. It was bigger than the Big Mac. It was wide. It was big. And there was a guy that came in and would order, and it was no double Whopper at that time. It was just extra meat, and they'd be charged for an extra meat. He was only one guy, one individual, because our appetites, most were at that level. Now you can pull up to Burger King and guess what you can get? Double Whopper, triple Whopper. Why stop there? I mean, so our appetites have increased, and we're only increasing that. And it does, studying enough to know where my limitations are, it calls out to you at all points of the day, at night. So even with diets, you may even hear some frank truthfulness responses to the question saying, I don't want to give up on all those things I love. So guess what? I don't. I don't much care now about the consequences. Maybe I will later. It's always later. When it's too late. But as I said this morning, that's described as foolishness, because to know better and not to do it is a fool. To know to do it, even doing right, the Bible says, to know to do right and not do it to him is sin, James 4:17. Now there's one for you. For all that says, well, sin is don't do, don't do, don't do. This one's do, but I didn't do. Well, now that's a sin. That's a whole new category. I may now need to walk and exercise. I've talked to those who have been recommended that by a doctor and asked the question, are you doing that? Well, I mean to. Someday. But in reality are not committed to doing it. But why is my question? What is the big deal on this little bit of effort? We always admit to later. And then we always admit that when we go through the process, how much better we're off, how much better we feel, we're not as tired, but then we lose that. We may have as much energy and then start to feel good. Truthfully, it's so much easier just not doing it. It appeals to the laziness of mankind. Ask someone to serve as a volunteer or serve in a public office, and what is the pushback there? That's too much commitment. Too much commitment of my time, my devotion, and they may be right. Being committed can be a challenge, but so worth the challenge when it comes to what we're trying to do today is be committed more to God. It's seeing it through when my flesh side say I'd rather not. Paul says I wage that war within. I mean, I think Weldon's even preached this before. No one really gets up and say, wow, I can't wait to sit in a pew for about an hour and listen to someone talk. I mean, it's not really that comfortable. It's not a lazy boy. I don't get all of my little snacks here like I have at home. It's not my setup. So it's a struggle physically. But spiritually you cry out, but I want to be there. I desire to be there. And when you added up all the not doing, you know what it gets you? It's exactly right. Nothing. of all the not doing doesn't add up to a cumulative of anything. It's still nothing. You can see and make small investments over time, and then adding it up, that creates something. A little bit of exercise over time, a little bit of weight loss over time. Now, you've got to get to that over time to see the best results, and see, that's what we don't want. I want to be able to take something, go to bed at night, and then take care of it. And I've lost 50 pounds overnight while I slept. Wow, what a great thing. Sign me up. But it's not so if you add up all the other stuff of the not doing, it still adds up to nothing. Now, why do I bring up commitment so much tonight? The reason I do is that I am so concerned about commitment to Jesus Christ through the end. It says, he that endureth till the end shall be saved. It's not a one and done. It's not, I've professed Jesus and go on with my life. It is a full, total commitment. And Jesus demands that. To have you pick up your cross, to deny yourself, to pick up your cross and follow after him daily. Do we have that in us? And it is so how much. I not only ask the question, but God asks. And he'll ask that in the end. And we better be prepared with our answer. And it better not be, well, when did we see you hungry or thirsty? Remember that? There was the dialogue. It says, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. And you know what their reply was? When did we see you hungry? When did we see you, Lord? If you would have come in and said you wanted something to eat, I would have opened up my refrigerator. I would have sat you at the table. I would have fed you. He says, when you've done that to the least, you better go search out who your least is, because you've got a category, I've got a category of leasts in your life. And when you've done it to the least of them, you've done it to me. When did we see you in this situation? When did I have opportunity? There was none given to me. That sounds like the one talent man. And not being so committed these days is so much easier. It's what Jesus was seeking and asking when he was here on this earth, and still asking you and I today, how much are you committed to me? I mean, really love me. And how devoted are you to me? Most of these men that took the gospel had to die for it. Are you willing to do that? I mean, to that degree? Someone comes in right now, do you believe in Jesus Christ? Or I'm gonna lop off your head. I mean, we've even had young children in school shootings and stuff like that, and you still hear it on the news. One was like maybe not a year or so ago. She died for her faith. Asked her, do you believe in Jesus Christ? Well, you're about to meet him. That's it. I don't know why that dialogue was, but she was committed to that. And even to her end here. Meaning, how much are you willing to follow? You can start with so many verses that ask each one of us the question, how devoted are you? How devoted am I? But in Matthew 16, Jesus asked the question again, and in Matthew 10, over in verse 38, over in Mark, and over in Luke, and concluded, whoever does not take his or her cross and follow me, they cannot be my disciple. Or in one version, they are not worthy of me. Here is Jesus' first mention of the word cross, by the way, to his disciples. And to them, it would bring up a picture of a violent, degrading death. He was demanding what with his statement? Total commitment. Even if it meant death. Peter said that he was ready for that, but was he really? Wasn't. He said, if you're going to go there, I'll die with you. If you're going to be arrested, I'm going to be arrested with you. I'm going to die with you. No, you're not. You're going to deny me. Could you or I stand up to that today if it meant your life? And it would be for many of them in that day, and making this call to a full surrender, the same call to everyone else, a life or death devotion. Now, see, we don't talk in terms like that. Just, loving God and just appreciating his gift to salvation and nothing of the give back portion, because then we call that works. James tried to dispel all of that. History only points out men like Nathan Hale in this country that said, before being hanged, I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country. Now, what kind of dedication is that? They were in a war that they should not have won, and no one thought they would. On paper, it was ridiculous. The biggest world army, for England in the world, dominant military dominance, to take on the United States in infancy form with militia and farms people, and it was a joke to them that they had to come over here and handle that. And he was able to say that. How many would that of us say that today? How many would offer that? Why we don't forget those who have served, and we appreciate those who are served and serving with a commitment of their lives because they know it. There's no hidden line about when you sign up in the military about what could happen. You understand that going in. Oh, I never knew that. You can't send me overseas. I may die. They get that for country. But do we get that for Christ? And right now, and to the point of death, when it's so hard to give up on anything, even our place in line. You give up electricity for any amount of time, how upset we get. I can't watch my TV. I have no internet. I have nothing. Because of no electricity for 30 minutes or an hour or maybe even a couple of days. Give up any of the comforts, our phone, our heat, our food. The word commitment, when you look it up in the dictionary, says the state of quality of being dedicated to a cause or activity. Allegiance, devotion, faithfulness, dedication, loyalty. All of these great things we hear the military use terms as such as this. The interesting thing about our language is the word can mean just the opposite of when we think of someone being committed. Isn't that interesting? Committed. And if you have to put someone away and they are committed, they are under a service that's out of duty or obligation. It's a have to. If they go into a mental institution and they are committed, they're having to go there. Now, I know the laws have changed that, and that's why we have a lot of homeless on the streets, because they can't keep them against their will. And if they say, I don't want to be here anymore, they can't keep them. Even with interventions and they send them off to rehabs, they can walk out at any given time. You wish they said, man, I wish someone would make them stay there because it's for their best interest. It'd be good for them. But being committed restricts. That restricts freedom of action, and then someone else decides your fate. You know the scary part of all that? We don't make a decision or are not committed to him today, we will be eventually be committed, sent to torment for not accepting the penalty and the rewards for taking over of sin of the blood of Jesus Christ. And if that is your decision, then you're going to be committed to a place that you don't want to go. Well, I don't want to go there. It does not matter. That choice has already been set in place with you, a place that you don't want to stay. And would give anything at that point to bargain for and get out of, but will not happen. And sadly, for eternity, forever. It's easier to be committed to him now, I think, than be actually being committed and put away later. As I've stated before, right now you and I are on our time. It is. After this, I'll do this or that if I have time. See, I'm making all the decisions. After work hours, you're on my time. You're on my hours now. And if I get called in, if you work at a company, it may be overtime, time and a half, double time. Why? Because they're into your time now. See, all of that stuff is respected. Over there, we're on God's time. And since, if you're following along, there is no time with God, and that's all on God's placement of where we will end up. And why it's who we fear today, just as Scripture points out, by Jesus himself in Matthew 10 and 28. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. That's the real important stuff. All about you worrying about dying and breathing your last. You have the wrong set of fear, because that's going to happen to every single one of us. It says, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Now, Jesus said that. That's some serious thought and consideration should go into that. What will it take? How much are we committed? Sometimes we are so indecisive, but in the end, we can be busy trying to save our life now, and that becomes the most important thing, which we all know we'll lose it, or losing it now for his sake and saving in the end. It sounds like it's a paradox, but it's not. Your choice, that Jesus said, is if he has the words of eternal life. Now, there's the key. And if you really believe that he has the words of eternal life, maybe I should be a little more motivated to follow and be more committed to him with everything in my life, because it matters that much. Do you know who had to also do that? All the disciples. They had to see the end in sight in order to go and believe that way through the end. And it would take knowing that in order to surrender one's life, they knew that they all had to do that. The question to ask ourselves is, are we that committed? And if not, are we willing to be committed, being sent away to the dark and eternal place, being sent away by God over the lack of decision and commitment? As I mentioned this morning, for his yoke is what? Easy. Going alongside of him, and his burden is light. Matthew 11 and 30 says, even though most to believe the opposite of it's true about following God. that it's too hard, it's too restrictive, and you're not going to enjoy it, which is a lie. And by following him, we will see it and make our lives better, not for just tomorrow, but for the rest of our lives, if we trust him fully and put our full trust and commitment to him today. Now, the question is, can we do that? And if we haven't, can we start to do that? Or maybe we've put off and be rededicated to that. Start to do that more. I want to leave you with some practical tips. And the number one thing that I can pass on that I think is relatable to not only my marriage life, but in some of the things that I'm doing, is get a partner. One to follow you. Just like my diet, Kay and I are in this together, which helps. Just think, if I wasn't and she was, how difficult is that one for one to succeed? It's very difficult. Doesn't say it's impossible, but it's challenging. But when you have a partner, it's so much easier. Perry and I exercise together. One helps the other. We've got a regular day and a time that we meet, and we like that because of accountability. Why? Because there's a day that he may not really feel like going, but you know what? He's going for me. And there's a day that I don't really feel like going, but I'm going for him. And the accountability that we both get there, we get it done. Because it's together. It's doing life together. And we understand that kind of support. And I've said this before, but Christianity is not a solo sport. Why someone says, I'm done with church. I just stay home. And Jesus and me are just good. So the question is, helping with one another and getting a partner and doing life together, can we all be more, not only committed, but be more accountable and accountable to each other? Because one day accountability will matter. What we did and what we said in this body will matter, because it says everything. It will matter with eternal reward or eternal consequences. Do you want the accountability now? Is it still called the day because I can make corrections and I can team up and get something and have accountability? Or do I just want to wait, just like not worrying about health reasons, worry about that accountability later? And I go to the doctor's office and he says, I'm sorry, there is nothing we can do. If you would have come to me 6 months earlier, a year earlier, I don't know why you put it off. I just don't like to go. I don't like to hear all those things. I don't like to be restricted. Okay, now you're accountable. And now there's no turning back, and there's nothing we can do. And now you will bargain for everything. If I could just go back and tell me 6 months earlier, just go do it, I'd do it. Send someone back to warn my brothers. See, the accountability will be there. I will learn to love him either today and forever, and that will make all the difference in the world. I welcome you to do the same. It's all about commitment. It's all about accountability. If we can be of any help to you, that's why we offer that as an invitation of prayer, that we can pray with you and for you. Maybe you've struggled with commitment. We all have, as I've already admitted, with my diets and exercise and all kinds of things. And I'm a yo-yo. I go back and forth, up and down, struggle with it, but I keep going. That's why we do life together, so we can help each other. If we can pray with you and for you on anything that lays heavy on your heart, maybe you've never obeyed the gospel and would like an opportunity, it'd be extended to you, and it's ready and everything is prepared at this moment. Whatever your desire is, if you have one, if you'll come now as we stand and as we sing.